So, when Richard dies in 1199, he will be succeeded by John, and if we take a look, you can see how John quickly loses in France, and how Philip II conquers those lands and incorporates them into his ownership and other dukes of France. So it starts, it looks like, in Normandy, and then bam, all that's left is what would sometimes is called Gascony, but it's a smaller duchy of Aquitaine than was inherited by his mother, Eleanor. And, that's all that's left. And his reign, obviously, we know is fairly unsuccessful. You have actually an invasion. Well, you have the Barons' War. You get the Magna Carta, all that good stuff. A son of Philip II, I believe his name is called Louis the Lion, or something like that. He succeeds. He actually, some of the barons name him king, and he fights in England, and is temporarily, by some of the barons named king, but it doesn't last long, and they renege, and he goes back to France. I don't believe he succeeds Philip II. I believe he dies before Philip II, so he's never king. But yeah, you have the complete loss of the lands, these lands, except Gascony. And John II's not a very good king, and he goes on to die in 1215, and just leaves this little portion right here of where Aquitaine is, and well, Gascony, I believe it's called now, or later on. And this would be kind of the influence, which would be go into like the Edwardian phase of, the Civil War. I'm sorry, not Civil War, the 100 Years' War. You could argue that the 100 Years' War is a civil war between the House of Valois. You have the Valois Burgundians, who are very influential and actually fight against and for influence in the French capital in Paris, with influence on the crown. And it's you have Philip the Bold, who is the son of John the Good, who was king of France. He was at Agincourt. He was captured, and his, I believe, youngest son Philip did not flee. He stayed with him and was one of John's favorites, supposedly, and he was given the Duchy of Burgundy, unfortunately, and they quickly were able to succeed. They by happenstance got what would be Flanders through a marriage quickly, and it was a very important and powerful place, very wealthy. But you had like John the Fearless, Philip the Bold, I think a John the Good. You had also a Charles the Bold, who was the last, who lost his head at Nancy. But that's a different story. We can talk about that later. But anyways, you had John the Fearless, I believe, uh, fighting, and so basically the Valois Burgundians fighting um, for control over the French crown and its influence against like the House of Orleans, who also had a claim to the crown. And at that point, would have John the Fearless is, I believe, the uncle of the current French king, or maybe it's Philip the Bold. I don't remember. It might be Philip the Bold, but John the Fearless is the one that has someone assassinated in the House of Orleans, and there's a whole back and forth between there that eventually, I believe, ends with Charles the Seventh or Charles the Victorious, who's the French king, assassinating the Duke of Burgundy at a meeting where they were supposed to. He was supposed to be a peace made at that point because the English, I mean the House of Valois Burgundy was allied with the English. You know, that's how Joan of Arc was captured by them and actually given to the English, and the English uh, burned her at the stake, unfortunately. Um, anyways, you have that whole aspect of the Hundred Years' War. That's definitely, you could say, a civil war, um, on top of another war. Um, the Edwardian phase you have. There's several phases in Henry the Fifth and all that good stuff, but anyways, you have John Lackland dying in 1215, and there, that's what they have basically, and they, I believe they don't really make any gains. I mean, Philip II made all the gains back. He was a great king. Like I said, my favorite French king probably. I don't know. I like Henry IV. Some people like Louis XIV. Obviously, it's Sun King. I'm not a huge fan. Um, you know, but I mean, he basically engaged all of Europe in a war, the War of Spanish Succession, um, and got into a stalemate, and his grandson actually became king of Spain, and that's how you have uh, the the Bourbons at that point, because Louis the 14th was House of Bourbon. That's how the Bourbons got on the Spanish throne. I mean, and that's how they got their seat there. The grandson of Louis the 14th was the king of Spain, and the Bourbons are on the Spanish crown till this day. Actually, that's who they descend from. And anyways, all that history that we can talk about later. But in terms of French kings, I really like Philip II, Philip Augustus, and aptly named. He is, I kind of like Augustus, which one of the greatest Roman emperors, obviously, probably the best, but militarily he was not the best. He was not great. In fact, he was often absent when needed. Um, you know, in Spain when Gaius Julius Caesar was had brought him along with him. He had stomach pains and was absent and kind of sickly all the time around there. But he was a brilliant administrator, um, a great statesman, and he had a good friend, a best friend that helped make him one of the, if not the best Roman emperors, one of them. And that would be Marcus Agrippa, who was um, militarily excellent and, was rewarded obviously heavily. Gets to a point where he's so successful that I don't remember who it is, but someone tells Augustus that you either have to kill him or marry him into the family, and Augustus does. He marries him to his daughter, I believe, and actually they have two children. Don't remember the names. One's Lucius, name's Lucius, Gaius, blah blah blah, whatever. And the other one might be Gaius something something blah blah blah. I don't remember, but they seem to have some aptitude for competency and would have been definitely better emperors than in the Julio-Claudian dynasty. They would have been seemed to be successful, but they died young. I believe one died at a siege in Armenia, and another one I don't remember, but they were 18 to 20 years old, and it really broke Augustus's heart because he actually adopted them and raised them in his household. And he named them. In fact, when Augustus at the Senate, he is and naming Tiberius his heir. He's obviously brokenhearted and regretfully he's like does not want to, but there's no other option to name Tiberius as his heir, and he does. And because of the unfortunate death of his grandchildren, or you could call them his own children, they have to have Tiberius as his successor, unfortunately. And there's a lot. Unfortunately, Augustus, fortunately, he reigned for a long time, helped stabilize it. But you had several people that could have succeeded him. What's it? Nero Claudius Drusus, or just Drusus. Tiberius's brother seemed to have more skill and experience. I mean, militarily, but also politically. Tiberius was kind of antisocial, kind of a little strange. He didn't have a lot of charisma, at least in my opinion, comparatively. And his younger brother, I believe, would have been a better emperor for sure. You have his son Germanicus, who definitely seemed to be competent and could have succeeded him. I mean, you have Germanicus, and he had a few sons too. Unfortunately, Tiberius kind of they were slaughtered except the youngest, who turns out to be Caligula. Unfortunately, no wonder why he was a little psycho. But they called it the Caligula. Was a nickname. It's Little Boots. He was the mascot of the legion while his father was on campaign. And he had a little legionary outfit that he would walk around in and be their mascot. Anyways, yeah, he unfortunately saw a lot of stuff as a young child and was definitely influenced by that. And Tiberius allowed some nonsense to go on. I mean, Tiberius' own son, I think, obviously, I mean, to succeed Tiberius at that point would have been much better than what they got, which was Caligula. But he dies, and then his grandson, I believe, he doesn't believe that Tiberius doesn't believe he's actually his grandson, and was cheated on or something to that degree. You can do a little bit more research. I'm just spitballing off the top of my head. But they go. So Tiberius' son dies young, and Tiberius' grandson, who doesn't believe is his grandson, also is allowed to be killed. I don't recall at what age. He dies young. There's Serjanus, that whole plot with Serjanus and the Praetorian Guard. Serjanus is one of the most annoying people in history to me. He's like, I just kill him. Caused a lot of damage for his ridiculous ambition. I mean, if he didn't have access to power like he did, I mean, you would have had a lot of people succeed that were a lot better than what they got. And the reason, you could argue, the bad emperors you got to succeed Tiberius, which was Caligula, was because of all the bloodshed and killing going on, and witnessing as a young child his brothers being killed. I mean, talk about heartbreaking, talk about damaging, talk about trauma. No wonder why Caligula was a little psycho. Anyways, it's unfortunate because there's a lot of people that could have succeeded Augustus, that did not, and would have been a lot better for Rome. But I totally went off on a side tangent. But yeah, Serjanus, screw him. I hate him. He's annoying. He's up there with like Thomas Becket, who is very annoying to me as well historically. When you're just like, dude, I would kill this guy for Henry II. Not really, but you know, he's annoying. He's kind of feels like he's an imposter. He's, what's that called? Imposter syndrome. You know, not from the upper class. Kind of made his way up and has to always be better, do better. He dresses better. I mean, there's famously him and Henry II, who are good friends initially, walking in London, and they thought he was king because Thomas Becket was dressed so extensively. You know, it's kind of like how, well, us, the lower class, working class, it depends on where you're from, I guess, but you know how people get attached to brands, like, you know, when they come up, they're, once they make it, you know, it's all Gucci and Fendi and, well, I don't know any of these other but you know, name brands, and you know, kind of brainwash, basically. It's a psyop, and once they make it, they buy all that, and even those that don't just go put money that they don't have into stupid stuff, like I need a Chanel bag, like, you know. But consequently, you know, like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, they don't dress like that. So it's interesting, and it's because they didn't come from the low class, the poorest of the poor. I mean, in America, so it's relative to where obviously you are, but it's interesting. But anyways, Henry II makes Becket give his cloak or whatever to a beggar, and he doesn't want to, and Henry rips it off him. But Henry gave him power, put him on his cabinet, made him archbishop, and then he got religious and I guess wanted to be a martyr. But he's annoying. He's also like Rasputin. I hate Rasputin. I would never mind. But yeah, people like that in history I dislike. Went off on another tangent on Serjanus and Rasputin and Thomas Becket. But anyways, could have been a lot of other people that succeeded Augustus that didn't. Could have been several people that were better that could have succeeded Tiberius that didn't. In fact, the best, I would argue, after Augustus, which is not like it's hard to be the best, you have two psychos. You got Caligula and Nero, who were some of the worst. But Claudius was pretty good. Unfortunately, he was kind of a simp, and was kind of the black sheep. He had a stutter, so Augustus kind of put him in the basement. And he famously was hiding behind curtains, when the bloodshedding was going on, when Caligula was being wrestled by his boyfriend in the bathroom, basically, and choked out. It would have been, imagine being a Praetorian guard guarding that door, and you're like, and you know what's going on. Do you go in there? Because if you do nothing and Caligula wins and makes it out, you're screwed. So what do you do? Anyways, he ends up helping. I don't know if it was Caligula choked out or stabbed out, something like that. Anyways, besides the point. But you got Claudius hiding behind the curtain, and there he's he's found and made emperor, and he doesn't do a bad job. I mean, the worst. Who does he marry? Some Agrippina Minor. One of those names that the Julio Claudians have for females. But he marries. I believe it's quite. I need to take another look and read. This has been years ago that I learned this information, probably half a decade. But is it his niece or something like that? And she already has a son who would be Nero, and they marry, and he's kind of a simp, and he makes there's Britannicus and Nero, and makes them both emperors, and then there's that whole drama with Nero, who kills Britannicus, basically. I believe he's poisoned anyways, because his mother was using, kind of influencing both of them, and told Nero that basically, do what I say, and he didn't want to anyways, but unfortunately they are the successors to Claudius. And while Claudius' reign was definitely not bad, probably of the Julio Claudians, the second best emperor, or third. I put him above Tiberius, although him learning of the adultery of his wife and kind of being influenced by her to make Nero and adopt him, not the best. But you can't escape your psychology. He was raised the way he was, so with women he was a bit awkward. I would say a little strange. That's why I called him a simp earlier. Not to rag on him. I mean, he ruled well. He just, in those aspects, didn't set up the succession as he should have, and was influenced, and kind of couldn't see through the fog, and it ended up with his biological son dead, him dead, and we get Nero, and then Nero and his mom basically have their thing. Nero's trying to assassinate her. He has like a little jerry-rigged pleasure boat rooftop set to fall on her, and kill her, but it doesn't. She makes it out, and eventually it's just he sends a Praetorian to kill her. And famously, there's that quote, "Aim here, for this is the womb that bore Nero." And then bam, they kill her.